We have one more speaker with us from Barcelona right now. Obviously you can hear us, Hanna. Let's try whether we can hear you.
Does that work? I'm speaking now.
Can I ask somebody more? We can hear you, but I think not the whole audience, because it comes from the computer only and not from the sound system. The usual technical.
Shall I speak? Does it work?
It works.
Yeah? Okay, perfect.
It's just some of the technical guys said that it won't work, but then it started working.
Okay, excellent.
So, hello, Hanna. We have about
Hello.
50, 60 people with us. It would be difficult to show you all of them, but at least try to show the panel. So, we had a presentation
Hello.
from a group of very tough and smart women, and it's now up to you. And as we agreed, we would like to ask you to talk about the initiative on the European Association Statutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vera, for your kind invitation. And I request very much that I know there was doing
Wait a moment. It worked and now it doesn't work anymore. Yeah, I know, but it worked from the big speakers.
Okay. Does it work?
Okay.
Okay.
So we can't
Yeah.
move the computer because the cable doesn't seem to be very stable.
Okay. Well, I think I will try to be brief then, because if it's not very well in terms of technology, and that I'm not interrupted all the time. But yeah, so I'm wishing you all the success, of course, for your important event today. And here we have our annual conference for Philea, for the Philanthropy Foundation sector. So I was not able to join you today, but virtually it works. So I was able to hear a little bit of your discussions already around civil dialogue and the importance of more participatory elements, which of course we also fully support and sign off. And indeed, the conference on the future of Europe have showed us some lessons, and we are liaising indeed as a wider civil society on that matter. And I think that will be also important to follow up on and to see how, in a context of a European wider civil society strategy, this element of civil dialogue can be strengthened. We have seen indeed in Europe, and several of you have noted that we have seen some restrictions coming in also at the national level, based on either money laundering, terrorism financing, tight rules that were introduced. Also, we've seen foreign funding restrictions introduced, so the sector's operating environment is not operating fully. And then we have also analyzed ourselves that the for-profit sector enjoys the free single market in the EU, but the non-profit sector does not yet. So we, as a sector, are not really able to move our seat across border. We are not able to merge across border. It's also complicated to give across border. So there have been calls also from the sector for the creation of European legal forms in the past, and we've had an attempt for creation of a European Foundation Statute, which was the most recent initiative, which was not successful at the time. But right now, there is a clear momentum again. There are now proposals out there for the creation of a European association statute as well as minimum standards for the national level. And this is something that was brought forward by the European Parliament. The MEP Sergei Labudinsky has been actively promoting the idea of creating European statutes again, reopen those files and create a new momentum in a specific moment of where we are, where we sense that our space is also at risk and we would need to have better tools for recognition and potentially new instruments to operate at European level, European legal forms to be potentially created, which could also help protect our space to operate, and also to enable cross-border European initiatives to not have to rely on creating branches in different countries, but to be able to create truly European instruments to be able to operate easily and be recognized easily immediately in the member states. So there we are. We have now a concrete proposal from the URI committee and a report which suggests two measures, two legislative measures. One is a regulation on the association statute, which really suggests a concrete creation of a supranational legal form, which would not replace national law, but which would be an additional supranational legal form that would then enter the national systems and would need to be implemented also at the national level. This proposal is quite detailed, and we have, as civil society, also provided initial comments on that. We are welcoming the idea of creating a European statute. We have flagged also some concerns about the need for this tool to be, if it was to be successful, that potentially one needs to consider a different legal basis than the current one, because the current legal basis for European statutes requires unanimous approval of all member states. And specifically in the current political situation, it might be very unlikely to reach that unanimous approval among member states. So there are discussions going on whether the legal basis should potentially be a different one. And then we've also been flagging that the report should not, the statute should be an easy and accessible tool. It should not be overly complex in terms of administration and supervision and reporting requirements. It should be easy and attractive for the sector to use it, and that will be something that we will now, of course, need to discuss in the future of how such a statute, if it would then go ahead, will look like in details. The second legislative idea in that report is the crafting of minimum standards, which would be in the form of a directive. That is a very new proposal, a new idea. It has not yet been considered. It's quite ambitious and would then also force member states then to have to ensure that these minimum standards are considered in their national legislations, where the competence lies, of course, to craft the legislation for the NPO sector. Here also we have, as civil society organizations, already analyzed in brief and submitted some initial comments on that, arguing that equally the minimum standards should be indeed an implementation of the freedom of association elements, hence guarantees for what is guaranteed by the freedom of association. And it should be minimum standards that guarantee certain elements and rights of our sector, but should not be introducing new barriers, of course. And in that spirit, we would like to also review and comment on the way forward. So where do we stand with this report and these two initiatives? Now, just very recently, the European Commission has responded to this initiative of the European Parliament, of this report. And what I hear is that the initial response is positive, so the European Commission will act. It is not yet clear in terms of what measures they will want to suggest. So this is something where also we as a sector will need to engage very closely with the European Commission, also with the European Parliament, to ensure that our asks are heard and that indeed whatever is suggested is done in co-creation. So whether or not they would be going for a regulation or whether they will consider looking for a directive potentially, which would have the advantage of not being bound to the anonymous approval requirement by all member states. This remains to be seen, and and positive news in that regard, that there will be follow-up action. If there's still time, I would also like to flag another element that is brought forward in the Social Economy Action Plan, which is another action plan of concern for the wider civil society space as well. It's an action plan for social economy, but associations and foundations, mutual societies, cooperatives, as well as other social enterprises are part of the wider social economy family. And in that regard, we have been pushing for a better environment for cross-border philanthropy, so that giving also across border can be tax deductible and make it easier for donors to give across border. And that is something there where we believe that we also have a common agenda. And we are now pleased to see that in the Social Economy Action Plan, there is an announcement that there should be more guidance potentially to member states of how to implement the non-discrimination principle at the national level, so that we have no discrimination, which currently still exists in some member states with regard to the treatment of foreign-based charities, public benefit organizations, or their donors. So that is also a new opportunity there, and we'll be happy in liaising also with the wider civil society on that to ensure that whatever is developed is really developed also in a participatory way and answers also the needs of the sector. A third element, maybe briefly, is that we have seen that quite a number of national restrictions were caused or related to, in many cases, over-implementation of the existing money laundering and terrorism financing policy, in particular the money laundering directive. There is now a new AML, I call it AML money laundering package, in the making, and we have been advocating for clearer definitions and more guidance to member states, indeed, how to apply it to associations, foundations, and the non-profit sector. The wording of beneficial ownership, for example, is not clear, so we've made proposals of how to amend that. We consider that the European Commission has not yet really heard us. We've been engaging now with the European Parliament on the matter. They have been understanding our issues of concern, and they have been telling us also that they will try to work on some clarifying definitions. And clearly, where it is cases of where national law is in conflict with EU law, that is, of course, where existing procedures such as infringement procedures are possible, and we have issued guidance together with ECNL on how to use EU law to defend civil society space and how to potentially argue that national law developments are in conflict with EU law. But of course, we would like to see the EU policy also crafted in a way to avoid that there are restrictions put on our sector. So we are engaging around the AML directive and the revision and the whole AML package, but it's something that our sector needs to monitor closely. Because we've seen, unfortunately, that some of the restrictions put in place are caused by some unclear wording, and in some cases, of course, governments using this as a tool to overregulate and to close down on our space. So maybe in a nutshell, that's where we are. As also Civil Society Coalition, we've set up some meetings with policymakers to follow up on these three really huge entry points. And as Carlotta said, we are also engaging around the conference on the future of Europe, the Democracy Action Plan, rule of law. So there are a lot of entry points, and eager to follow your discussion also how you think that the overarching fitting of these different entries are in line with a joint civil society strategy. So I think that's maybe enough from my end, and bon courage. And I wish I was there with you.
Thank you, Hanna. Thank you for this much information and the contribution.